Hi everyone and welcome to your daily tarot reading. Now today's cards reflect that these energies are very dual and they have so very many psychological layers to it that right now all of us are facing a very tough time, especially mentally, because that Two of Swords opens the reading, and this represents that all of us are blind and shackled from a certain perspective, where if there's any big decisions that we need to take right now in our lives, well, this is where we find ourselves incapable of deciding, incapable of even knowing what our highest good is. And this doesn't really represent a spiritual perspective. This actually represents a very down to earth perspective because we do not know where we stand, where we do not know world and society and everything that we had for granted. We had crystal solid in our lives just a couple of months ago. Right now is in a state of upheaval. Right now, if anything, looking at physical reality is just telling us that we cannot trust anything, and we are much better off just trusting whatever we believe, even if we don't have like all the information necessary, even if we do not have statistics, even if we do not have any guarantees that what we believe is true. But still, this is where going deep within is a much better option than to trying to make sense of what is gonna happen in the world, in our lives, in our collectives, in society. This is where we know for certain that even if we'd make choices, decisions, big plans right now, they wouldn't lead to absolutely anywhere. So this is the kind of moment when you are a person of wisdom, of diligence, when you are a very rational person who always tries to take everything into perspective when making a decision or taking a big action. You are even more disadvantaged than people who just go with the flow, people who live in total ignorance. All of those people can simply choose a version that they find online. They can choose the soothing and comforting words of their representatives, and they can ground themselves in that, even if deep down inside they know that not everything is as it seems. Even though our minds, our practical skills, our decision making functions are not very empowered in the present moment, and we cannot ground ourselves into anything really, there is a totally different kind of energy which might be the total opposite of this, and this is the Queen of Wands reversed. Now, the Queen of Wands represents our passions, it represents our instincts, but it also represents the fertility of our fire energies, which is basically creativity, which is basically the desire to live, the desire to experience, the desire to create, express yourself, learn, study. In other words, to live life based on your priorities, based on the person that who you are. And since she's reversed, well, it isn't a big surprise that because of all these limitations and because of the present moment confusion, that Queen of Wands, the power of our passions, the fertility of our passions and our inner fire, is put on standstill. It is frozen basically, and it is just starting to build up inside of us like a volcano, where the pressure is getting very, very strong, and we perceive this either as frustration, either as depression, because this is also an inner anger, because you want to live, you have all the motivation, the ambition, all the love for life basically inside your heart, but you cannot do anything with it. You have to limit yourself. This isn't where outer reality limits you, as in someone telling you, don't do this, don't do that, or suffer the consequences. But this is where you have to limit yourself. You have to lay down the rules and regulations for yourself in order to safely navigate in external reality. And this is causing a massive frustration, a massive inner anger, basically, because you know that you can only point the finger at yourself because you are enforcing all those rules. But when you think about it, you have no choice, you have no option. So this just leaves the energy. This takes away all the polarity, all the charge of the energy, and it just leaves the fire, the inner magma, so to speak, which is building and building and building, and just asking you, begging you to invest that energy, that fire, that passion into something. But because of the Two of Swords, the moon in the sign of Libra, you're just trying to weigh the options. You're trying to play with the scales of justice. You're trying to look at things from every certain perspective. And this is where you're trying to be really, really cool and rational, because Libra is a very inanimate sign. So that blindfold on the goddess of justice is basically the blindfold you have to put on yourself, because you know that most of all, this is about you, these decisions about your future, your life, your career, your soul, your creativity. So you cannot actually compare yourself to anyone's situation. You know that this is just about you. This is where you have to make decisions for yourself. So that blindfold needs to be placed on there. You know that this is the right attitude, the right approach to it. But still, the scales of the justice are never in equilibrium. They are simply not even, they're not balanced. And that means that when you weigh your options, the disadvantages are always going to be much more heavier, much more significant than the advantages. So you know that you cannot decide right now. You know that you have to wait it out. You know that you have to be patient, but at the same time, this isn't sitting back and relaxing and letting events unfold. This is where you have to be alert. This is where you have to have your senses wide open. This is where you have to be in a state of readiness to take the option, the opportunity, the choice whenever it enters your life. And it can enter the next hour, the next week, the next month, because this is just how uncertain everything is. But this is just the rational part. This doesn't mean that your creative energies, your passion, the power of your will, basically, your desire to live life, that won't wait. That cannot be rationalized. That is what it is. And perhaps the only option to tune it down, to, calm down the volcano a little bit, is to tire yourself out physically, where you simply do not allow the fire to start consuming you, to start burning you, to start heating up your intellectual sphere, as in, hot air. So symbolically, you cannot allow yourself to turn into a hot air balloon and just float away into the obscurity of space, because this is where you need to be present. So I think for very many people, the only option is physical exercise or physical activities which just consume that inner fire. Yes, it is a temporary fix, but there is no real option here. Now the star follows these two cards, and it is a really good sign, because it tells you that you can invest all your passions, all that inner fire, not just in physical activities to tire yourself out, to trick yourself basically, but you can also focus, concentrate on the future. Yes, it is even frustrating to do that, because you know that you're dreaming about a time that you cannot experience right now. But if you are able not to allow the frustrations to get that much in the way of your focus and, planting those seeds of intention, this is where you can turn your hopes, your dreams, everything that you wish to experience, everything that you know you deserve, everything that you want to create for yourself in the future. This is where you can put all that fire inside of you, all that passion, a very good use, because if you pump that energy, because that is basically energy, that is raw energy, especially because it's creative energy, it is also the fire of the feminine element, so that represents creation, that will birth something, that will be a very powerful magnetic force basically. So pumping it into the future, but without rationalizing it, just focusing on the emotions you'd like to experience and just meditating on that or thinking about that without specific elements and expectations, just focusing on the brute and raw version, on the true seed of what you have to experience. That can be a really powerful alternative to de-stress yourself, while at the same time energy travels in time. So if your mind guides that energy into a future timeline, then that represents a future prosperity you're going to have energetically. And let's play the scenario where you finally get your clarity, you finally make that decision, things are finally starting to align for you, and let's say that you're already in a future timeline and you have to create, you have to, embody your passion, you have to work with your creativity. And since a past self of yours, who you are in the present moment, already pumped all this energy into that timeline, well, that represents that much more creativity, inspiration, endurance, stamina, willingness, ambition, and determination for you in the future, where all these energies are going to come to you naturally, and your inner reservoir of power is going to be overflowing. And if in that timeline you're actually living in a state of flow where resources come to you, the more energy you have means that the more prosperous your life is going to be. So this is just one option what you can do with that inner fire, that very powerful creative energies. Of course, this isn't available for anyone, but for those people who simply do not know of this technique or do not believe in this or doesn't resonate with them, can just invest all that fire into their spirituality. May it be the simplest prayer, or just daydreaming about the future and asking the universe to help, or what. It doesn't really matter what tradition you follow, what principles you have. This is something that everyone can do regardless. And the more you do it, the more powerful your lucky star is going to be, the moment when it has to shine on your light in the not so distant future. Now the reading is closed by the moon and the 7 of Wands. And this energy is that of fear, that of inner restlessness, and ultimately manipulation. And that 7 of Wands is a very powerful message that we have to defend ourselves. We have to defend ourselves on every single level. Defend ourselves from the energies, from the practical information, from the fears of other people, to the fears and doom and gloom that the TV and media are pumping into us, to the theories and wild explanations of other people. This is where you actually have to detach yourself from others. And even if what is left after you detach is an even bigger confusion, at least it's your confusion, at least it's something that is within you and not sourcing from other people. And that means that you have already defended yourself, that you already stood your ground. Because think about it this way, even if you're confused and have fears of your own and have a lot of insecurities of your own, because this is absolutely normal and natural, especially under these circumstances, especially when the global material situation is targeted by all of this. this is where we just know that all of us are in trouble. But your own fears, your own insecurities, your own questions are more than enough. And chances are, because they're your own, you are more than capable of clarifying them and stabilizing yourself. Yes, of course, it requires a little bit of patience, effort, and inner work, but you are capable of handling your own psychological turmoil, let's just say your own confusions, because there's that saying that no one has a cross on their backs which they are incapable of carrying, because this is how divine justice works. All of our hardships are custom built so that we can carry them, so that we can navigate through them. Only when we make our crosses heavier by dramas and self-victimization, or allowing others to put their weight on us, that is the moment when our crosses crush us and our stories end. But this is why being confused and being in a confused state alone is still a much better option than to follow others and then to allow the insecurities and feelings of others to drive us mad and to just destabilize that little spark of inner light that is helping us in the present moment. So thank you so much for listening. And please remember, it's much better not believing anything or not knowing what to believe, rather than to consuming other people's beliefs and integrating it into ourselves, because that always leads to something really, really unhealthy. Well, thank you so much. Have a blessed and safe day, everyone. Bye for now.